Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Game Changers Devotional. Certainly glad to have you on the call, and we don't think anybody shows up here by accident. We think God places everybody on the call that He wants at any particular Wednesday morning that we have. I want to remind you that we do have some recorded devotionals that are on Spotify. I just cannot get back into our account, and I'm still working on that. But if you have somebody that wants to know what we do here, you can just share the Spotify with them, and you can find us under Game Changers Devotional. Also, you can find us on YouTube. We've got most of those devotionals on YouTube, and like I say, you can still find us out there. Also, I want to remind you, you can invite anyone you want to get on this call with us. And I want to go ahead and ask you to mute your phones if you haven't done so already, so that there's no background noise. Today I'm going to be leading our devotional, and I'm Michael Pate, and it's always a privilege and an honor to be able to lead a devotional for you. Sometimes somebody will say something to you, and they say it at exactly the right time when you need to hear it. And a couple of nights ago, a friend of mine who knows everything that I've been going through in life lately, and I know everything he's going through, and we call each other and check on each other, but he shared this with me. Everybody loves the mountaintop, but the valley is where the fruit grows. And that statement kind of stuck with me. In fact, I shared it with somebody yesterday. We all love the mountaintop because those seasons when life is going well, prayers are answered, and we can clearly see God working. We love that. But I don't know of anybody that just volunteers for the valley. And nobody asks for disappointment or uncertainty or a heartache or nights when your mind will not slow down enough for you to sleep. Yet all of us eventually walk through one. And I can say that I haven't always handled every difficult season perfectly. At times, I've worried more than I've prayed. I've asked God why something was happening and wondered when it would finally change. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe that's something that you've encountered. And maybe you're there right now. But my friend's word reminded me of something. Fruit does not normally grow on the mountaintop. It grows in the valley. And because it grows in the valley, because that's where the soil's deeper. That's where the water collects, and that's where the roots have an opportunity to grow. The mountaintop, though, is nice because it gives us a better view. But the valley is often where God does His deepest work. And I have 2 points this morning. First of all, the valley does not mean that God has left you. When we look in Psalms 23:4, David says, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." See, David understood that valleys are a part of life, and following God does not mean that we will never face any trouble. It means we will never face trouble alone. Did you hear me on that? It just means that we will never face trouble alone. And the heart of that verse is simple. David did not understand everything or know when the valley would end, but he knew that God was going to be with him. So sometimes we assume that God is with us and He'll keep us from every valley, but God's presence does not always keep us out of the valley. Sometimes His presence carries us through it. The valley has a way of showing us what we are really depending on. When everything's going well, it's so easy to depend on our plans, our finances, our experience, and our ability. But when those things are no longer enough, we begin to understand how deeply we need God. A lot of times our prayers just become more honest. Sometimes we turn to the Word. We open up the Bible to try to gain some direction. And we stop asking God to bless our plans and start asking Him to lead our steps. David said, "I'll walk through the valley." It was part of his journey, but it was not his final destination. So if you're in the valley today, I don't want you to confuse your present location with your final destination. God's still with you, and He's still leading you. And then the next thing I thought about is the pruning is preparing you for greater fruit. In John 15:2, it says, "Every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." If a gardener is knowledgeable about what he's growing, he does not walk up the healthy vine and start cutting branches at random. Every cut that he makes when he's pruning it's for a purpose. He may be removing the dead or diseased branches so that the problems that he's having won't spread. He may be removing little small sucker shoots that are on that plant in order to let it produce more fruit. And sometimes he thins out branches because it's just become overcrowded, and he knows that fresh air and sunlight will reach the center of the plant, and that'll help it grow. And sometimes he even cuts back healthy growth. You ask yourself, why in the world, if something's growing well, there's no disease on it, and it's there, why would the gardener cut something away that's healthy? Because a vine can spend so much strength producing leaves and uncontrolled growth that it has less energy to produce fruit, and careful pruning redirects the plant's strength toward the branches. There are times when something is removed from our lives we thought we needed. A door closes, a plan changes, something that made us feel secure just isn't there anymore. But not every painful experience is God directly cutting something out of our lives. We live in a broken world where painful things happen, and sometimes that is coming from people that aren't relying on God to help them make decisions. But whatever the source of our valley is, you've got to remember that God still can use it. Nothing we surrender to Him is wasted. So I want you to think about this. The pruning may be painful, but it's not pointless. God's not simply interested in making our lives look impressive. He wants our lives to become fruitful. This is my challenge for you this week. I want you to take an honest look at the valley you're walking through. Instead of asking only, God, when are you going to get me out of this? Start asking, God, what are you teaching me here? Is there something you're removing or redirecting? What kind of fruit are you trying to produce in me? Then ask God to show you one person who needs encouragement, and you go share something He has taught you in your valley. The fruit God produces in us is not only meant for us, it can become nourishment for someone else that may be struggling with the same thing that we're struggling. I'm still walking through some things myself, and I don't have every answer or know how everything will turn out. But I am learning that I can trust the one that's walking with me. Now, are there days when I feel like my trust isn't as great as it should be? Yeah. But see, everybody loves the mountaintop. We love that view. We love the victory. We love to celebrate. But when you find yourself in the valley, remember, you don't assume God has forgotten about you. Your roots may be growing deeper. Your faith may be getting stronger. And even though you can't see it, God may be preparing your life to produce fruit that you never imagined. So do that this week. Use the fruit that you're bearing right now in the valley or coming out of the valley to encourage somebody else. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, and thank you for all you've done, dear God. I just pray that you would help me to always remember you're there with us, dear God. I would pray that, when doors closes, on something that we're really thinking that is your will, that it's closed because you may be protecting us from something. You may be just telling us, hey, there's something better coming along. But when those doors shut, dear God, help us to look to you and help us to be grateful that you shut that door. Dear God, I'm praying for every man on this call and every woman on this call, dear God. I'll lift them up to you. And if they're out of a valley, dear God, I just thank you for bringing them out of the valley they were in. If they're in the valley, dear God, just give them strength and courage and patience to just wait for you to reveal to them what's going on. Dear God, I just pray that you would be with everybody's families. I lift them up to you. I just pray that you would keep everybody on this call safe, their families safe, dear God, and that you would continue to bless us, dear God. We're thankful for what you have done for us, and we thank you for your Son who died on the cross so that we could have everlasting life. These things I ask in your name. Amen. Well, guys, I don't know if you're going through a valley or not, but sometimes when I write things, it's all because that it's something that I'm dealing with personally, and this has so far been a pretty tough year, but that's okay. There's been some spots in there that I feel like I'm starting to pull out of the valley, and I know that God has His hand in there. So I just want to encourage you, if you're going through that, reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody on this call, and like say, sometimes you call somebody up, they can have an encouraging word for you. So remember, share a call-in number with everybody that you run into. That way we can continue to help us, with growing this call and touching other people's lives. Until next week, keep going out and being a game changer in the world around you.